Okay, so a few weeks ago, I uploaded a video onto the channel interviewing or having a general conversation actually with my ex-business partner at my agency, Joshua Daniel George. The conversation was well over an hour long, and what I decided to do is split it into two parts. This video here is the secondary part of that video. So without further ado, this is so valuable. It's more of a conversation with two agency owners who parted ways, went in two completely different directions with their business, but had far greater success going in different directions than actually continuing and staying as business partners. Super valuable conversation. Sit down, get a pen and paper, watch this because you're not going to regret it. All the links to Josh's channel and everything will be down below, and the link to the other parts of this video will also be in the description. Without further ado, enjoy this. Super valuable. Let's get into it. And I feel like a lot of people only ever speak about the benefits, so it's good to speak about the negatives, right? And I think often people will look at people like me and you because we make YouTube content and think we've got all of our shit together at all times. We don't. I'm putting out fires every day. Like I have stressful nights, stressful times. And I bet there's days where you actually end up having to do 6 hours because you're dealing with a really high maintenance client. Like it's not all bloody roses and money bags. You know what I mean? It's like you have days where it's definitely more difficult. But I think ours would come differently. Like yours may come with the fact, like, you know what, you wake up and you've got the Liverpool games on, you're hungover, you've been out with the boys the night before, and you've got to set some ads up and you're like, for God, I just don't. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I won't necessarily have that stress because of the infrastructure I've got in place. However, my stress would probably come from the fact that, I've got such high level of overhead right now. But it's not that what's crazy about my overhead is almost all of my overhead is employees. Okay. So it's not overhead that I can get rid of. Mm-hmm. Also, if I want to scale, my overhead always scales with me. So realistically, if I want to get to double my client database, I'm going to have to double the amount of media buyers that I have in my team, which means my expenses as I want to grow the company and my fixed expenses of stuff that are due every single month, like my office rent, like my employees, as stuff that I'm in contract with, I can't not pay my employees. So, there's a lot more risk, but then our day-to-days are very different because I'm at a stage now where I've got a sales team, I've got a service delivery team, I've got a handful of media buyers, and then we've also got management in place. Everything on a day-to-day. So, the sales is taken care of by a sales team. That comes through to the service delivery team. Service delivery team handle that. And then anything on a day-to-day when it comes to interviews, when it comes to, we had to fire somebody this year, whether that's, giving somebody praise or, action in some kind of system in the business. Last 9 months or so or 6 to 9 months since I've had management in place, I've been working very closely with him so he knows my standards, the structure of everything. So my goal now is if I have something I want to implement, I'm more of like an idea person. Like, right, I have an idea that I want to have some kind of retention bonus in place for the service delivery team. Just using that as an example. I then throw that to the management and say, come to me with a few ideas. And then ones that I like, we'll sit down, we'll have a meeting. And then once I've decided on the decision, he can action that down the line. And I just check in with him. So my day-to-day is very much like my have to do on a day-to-day is very small. It's check my emails, check my Slack. And most of the time there's nothing in there because it's already being taken care of from management. It's just my time is not, I have to do it. It's more, okay, if I want to progress forward as a business, I can then build the systems. I can then come up with the ideas. I can then, I can say, I want to make the decision, right? We want to go into TikTok ads tomorrow. Let's hire and create a department. I'm not the one creating that department. I make the decision that gets passed down to management. So it's very different. But so my day-to-day is less busy. And I don't have the stresses of waking up and thinking, right, I've got an 8-hour, 12-hour day today. I've got to do all this stuff. Not that you do, but I'm just saying, someone else in your position, if who's just starting out, might have that. But my stress comes from, right, I've got to make payroll next month, right? Exactly. If we're unprofitable, I can't, so, but that for me, that motivates the hell out of me because it's like, you hear people say a lot of the time, if you want to get the Porsche or whatever, if you buy the Porsche, you'll figure out a way to make the payments. And it's like, it's an argument. Like I'm very much like, I will always figure it out. And that's why I love the taking this risk. I love it. I thrive off it because it wakes me up in the morning. I'm like, right, I want to continue to grow the company. I want to get all these more people involved. I want to start this department, this thing. And that comes with more overhead. And if I take the overhead on, I've got to make it work, right? And it's weird how I find some of the bigger risks that I've taken in my business, they've always paid off, you know? So it's very, very different. And I don't think, I would say, I mean, for the average person, I would probably argue that the way that you do it is probably better for most people, I would say.
I think it sort of depends on ultimately what you want.
Yeah.
You know, because I've also had like a period where I've got an office space and I was looking into hiring actual employees. And it just wasn't really the direction I wanted to go in. But it's not necessarily that was the wrong decision or anything like that, or that my decision's the right way, or vice versa. I think it just depends on what do you want and where do you get the most, what the most satisfaction from, basically. Like, if I look at my dad, for example, he'd hate my life. Like, he'd hate having to sit at a desk and not being able to contact clients. He's very extroverted. Even like if a client, so obviously we're based in the Netherlands, if a client from Sweden says, listen, I like what you do, let's meet up, he'll go to Sweden just because he loves it. He loves the physical, he loves the, like, you know, the actually being in offices and the corporate stuff. And like, he'd hate to have like what I've got, like the agency online and virtual, and like the only contact you've got is through Zoom. So it also depends on like what do you prefer, what angle do you want to go for, and at the end of the day, it's your decision. There's money.
It depends. Money, I would say though, on that note, it depends on what your goals are, right? Because if your goal is purely just profitability, well, how much money? Because realistically, the way that you're doing it right now, you would struggle to get to say like 300 grand a month, let's say, right? Because you'd have to be handling
the way it's structured now,
the way it's structured now, right?
Yeah.
But you would probably adapt over time, in all fairness. But so it depends how much money you're talking. If you just want to make 10, 20 grand a month, it's way easier doing it your way. Yeah. Because the amount of revenue you'd have to make, if I want to make 10 grand a month in profit, I've got to make a lot more in revenue because of all my costs.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about take home money, actual in pocket, your way is absolutely better. And as a beginner, for sure, your way is like 100% better. And it depends what your goals are as well, because if your goal is to exit a company, my way is probably better. I don't want to exit my company, but I'm just arguing. If I wanted to sell, my structure would work because I am not attached to my business in theory whatsoever, besides being more of a CEO position, chairman, making decisions. So my business is probably more sellable. It just depends what angle people want to go down, I would say.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. So if I'll tell you, before we get into that, I was going to say like what would be the next step, but before we get into that, let's just go back to when you hired your first employee, which was Kai, right?
Yeah, Kai. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like? And like, why did you make that decision? And what was it like the first time you hired someone?
Well, I mean, just as a bit of like value on the front of this, what I will say is everything that I have, a lot of the success and a lot of the bigger stuff the last year, like the revenue has gone crazy last year. Like we've grown crazy. We've 10x our amount of employees in a year. Like we basically hired an employee a month. Like we've got offices last year. We did. That has come in like a 12-month period. It's like the success overnight thing that's taken me 4 years of knowledge prior to that to get to this stage. But if you look at everything, like everything that was done, including the decision to hire my first employee, everything was done like baby steps. Like the first time I landed a client, I was like fully blagging it, and I was a freelancer and I was working. It was an hourly contract. And I don't know if I've mentioned this much online on my YouTube channels when I've said my story, but my first actual job on Upwork, it was for like, I think it was $500 a month, right? But that was $500 a month on an hourly contract. So I was actually working for $7 an hour. Now I was that desperate to quit my job. I didn't care if I was making $2 an hour. Like generally I was like, I'm going to work 100 hours a week if I have to quit my job, if I have to cut out all my expenses. But you look then, the first step was, I wouldn't have got a client for $2,000 a month with a media buyer in place. My first client, like I worked hourly for $7 an hour and got that first client. That first client led to my second client, that led to my third. And then I started to outsource. I made mistakes because I outsourced to crappy people, and I learned that the hard way, but I learned to outsource nonetheless. And then from that, so you progress up the line. And then same with my first employee, the decision to hire my first employee, I wasn't thinking, right, I'm going to hire this first employee. That's the first one I'm going to hire, because then in 12 months from now, I'm going to have, 10 employees and I'm going to have offices. I was making that decision right there. And it was, what I would say is it was scary as hell. And I had to learn everything. Like there was no course or anything to go through. I was like, right, How do I hire someone on payroll? How do I pay their salary? There's national insurance, there's tax. Like, when I used to be an employee, when I got my pay slip, like my tax was already paid. So I was thinking, do I have to pay that? Does my accountant pay that? Who pays that? Like, I was like, I didn't know. So I learned all of this stuff. But to answer your question, I suppose the value I'm trying to give there is that just take baby steps, first of all. If you want to grow to 1,000 employees one day, you've got to hire your first employee. It starts with that. And you'll do everything. You might do a lot wrong, but you'll get there. And for me, it was, again, I speak about my biggest risks that I take being the biggest benefits. When I was used to outsourcing everything online, the reason I made the decision is because I thought to myself, I keep outsourcing all of this stuff online. I totted up all my different costs and how much I was spending on different things. I was like, well, I'm spending a similar amount of money to what it would cost me to hire somebody full-time.
Yeah.
And I bet if I could have somebody full-time, not only could I have them do more than what's already being done, but I could control the standards, I can control the quality. And I was umming and ahhing about doing it. And like I do with a lot of things in business, is I make the decision and then I figure it out, right? I wasn't worried about how was I going to make payroll. I wasn't worried about what I knew. If I make the decision to hire, then I'll figure it out. So I made the decision, and it was a big risk at the time, like hiring someone, having somebody committed on payroll. It was scary, but I did it, and then I figured it out, and it was the best thing I've ever done, because then all of a sudden the quality of my results started going up because I could control the standards. When I wanted stuff done, I didn't have to wait 2 days for a response. It could be done within 10 minutes. I started to be able to automate other parts of my life and almost start to build more of a real company than just some kind of like outsourced online company. So for me, that was one of the best decisions I ever made, was hiring Kai and making that very first decision. And, his head likes to get nice and big because of it these days, because I always say it's one of the best decisions I make. And he's like, right, the success of the company is down to me, whatever. We always have a laugh about that. But yeah, honestly, he's still with me to this day, and super loyal employee and fantastic. And it was scary, man. I mean, you've gone a quite different direction. You've not got somebody on payroll, but you basically have an employee, right? Sort of with.
So now, obviously we've got a bunch of like VAs and stuff like that, just for like on and off jobs. So like we were talking yesterday, we were talking like data miners. Like, I don't have a full-time data miner, but if that wouldn't
make sense, would it?
No, but if I need like 100 emails of business owners within a certain niche, I'll just hire a data miner. I've got that. It's always the same data miner. I always use the same guy, but he's not like he's not on a full-time gig. So there's two people that are on full-time. One of them just being like a full-time VA that just basically handles my day-to-day stuff. And then the other one is Elliot, who was my very first full-time sort of employee. But he's on a freelancer basis, like they both are. And the way that sort of worked out was, it was just after we parted ways, to be fair. So we both decided that, it was in both of our best interests to sort of, carry on with our own agencies rather than, keep it all together. And then I landed a very big client, which back the retainer was 10K a month, which back then was like, mind blowing. It was like the very first time I've ever had a client that big. And there was also a rev share on the back end, which the way they presented it sounded like that could very quickly be a seven-figure deal. So what I then said to Elliot, because he was already banging on the door saying, listen, I'm working a sales job for a car dealership. I like sales, but I don't like the car dealership. I don't like working, physically like this rat race 9 to 5. And he at the time was starting up his own e-com store. So, he's got his own clothing brand, which now is actually doing very well. But back then it was just, it was just starting out. And we invested money into his first launch and stuff like that. And he realized, okay, there's potential here, but I need to give him more attention. So he was really saying, listen, I need an online gig because I'm also starting this online business. I need to transition to everything online because now I'm physically checking in at 9, I'm leaving at 5, and then I'm getting home. By the time I get home, it's like 6. Something to eat, and then I've got like 3 hours before I need to go to bed to work on this online business. This way I can sort of combine both. So that on the one end, we already had a limited company, for his e-com store. And on the other end, I just landed this major client, and I knew that, okay, because this was before I understood like Facebook ads and media buying. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to keep this client. 'Cause I think back then the lifetime value of a client for us was like 3 months tops.
Yeah.
Like the only other time a client would stay longer is if they just left us to it and they weren't really bothered. So if they had enough money to keep us on, they would. But if they were actually looking at the results we were getting, our lifetime value back then was like 3 months. So I thought, okay, I don't want this client to leave after 3 months because it's such a big client, it's such a big opportunity. So I thought, okay, if this is going to work, I'm going to have to be in the trench myself and either learn media buying to a certain extent where I know who I'm outsourcing it to is actually doing a good job, or just continue it on and do it full time, the media buying. So I told Elliot, okay, listen, like this is what's coming up. You need to man the ship, while I'm sorting this stuff out, manage the clientele and basically, work your way up and figure it out as we go along. And at the time, the plan was that he became the CEO of the agency. And because for this 10K a month client, we actually set up a whole different limited company. And the plan was that I would basically be the owner of 2 companies, but he'd be the CEO of one company and I find another CEO for this company. And it ended up not being, the way I anticipated and expected because of the whole lifetime value of the company, of the customers of the client that we had wasn't as long as we anticipated. So obviously the whole rev share was much lower than we anticipated. We made the decision to get an office space, which ended up being like €5,000 a month in rent because we wanted it in the centre of Amsterdam. So that was another bad decision on my part. And then back then as well, Elliot, because back then the stress for me was I've hired someone to be a CEO of a company that he had no experience in. So he's managing sales, he's managing the media buying, he's managing the clients, etc. And he's got zero experience. Obviously, it's a mistake from me to put him in a deep end that. Yeah. But to be fair to him, after 3 months, he picked it up very, very quickly. After 3 months, he was basically, I think knowledge-wise, he knew it just as much as I did. He was understanding how the agency worked, etc. So at the end, we basically just agreed, okay, I come back to the agency, I'll sort of be the CEO again. You just focus on the front end because his sales skills are really, really good, to be fair. So I said, if that's what you enjoy, if that's what you're good at, you just focus on that. And then I'll focus on the back end and the systems. And that's sort of how that whole relationship merged. And now it's like he does the front end, I do the back end. And I think that's where, like you said, that's where we sort of went wrong because we are both the introverts. Yeah. And he's the opposite to me. He's the extrovert. And I'm the introvert, so it works. So I can just manage the systems, I can manage the back end, and he's on the front end prospecting and getting on calls.
And I think you speak about that. It's done. It's basically he's an employee, right? He might not be on payroll, but he is.
Yeah, but he is. He's full time.
Right? Pretty much full time. And for you, this is where giving up control, I think, and this is, I think, probably both of our strengths. What a lot of people struggle with as entrepreneurs as they start to scale and grow is giving up control. You have to give up control. You also have to understand people will make mistakes. And you say you made a mistake throwing him kind of in the deep end and making him learn quickly. But I would also kind of argue, you probably, if you were to hire again now, you would probably have a checklist or a structure to tick him off on the way, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like partly the fact that you were so willing to give up control, I would argue, is partly why he's had so much success, because you thrown him in the deep end, he was forced to swim, And he's had, and I would, similar to me, I owe all the success of the company. Obviously a lot of it was built from me, but I wouldn't have a successful company if it wasn't for my employees. And if I never hired Kai initially, I owe so much of the success of the business to Kai and the fact that he helped me get it off the ground and get it to where it is today. And I know it's the same with you and Elliot, right? You owe a lot of the success you have with your business now to Elliot, but it proves the power of what you were saying, right? But I mean, I feel like that's another thing where we're so similar. Is we've never struggled to give up control, I feel. Ever.
No, definitely not.
In the beginning, that was for the negative though, right? Because we would give up control to anybody and think it would be okay. Whereas now I give up control, but with a very strict eye on the standards, and we have a set structure and system that they follow. So it's like we give up control because we've got the systems in place and we have the structures that work, which is a mistake we probably made back then because we didn't have that.
No, but back then it was just get the client in, outsource it for as cheap as we possibly can, and then just, go on to the next one. And I feel like now the industry is also slowly changing to a point where if you don't care about the results, you're not going to get very far.
You're gone, yeah.
Yeah, like I see the same with you as well. Like on Facebook stories, Instagram stories, you'll show results of your clients, and you can tell you're genuinely proud of the fact that you've just made your clients a shit ton of money. And I'm the same. Like if I get my clients' results, it's the best feeling ever. They're happy.
Yeah.
They're referring us on to other people. Our reputation is increasing on and offline. And back then, I feel like that just wasn't really the case with, no, not necessarily with us, but just in general. That wasn't the whole aim of the game. The aim of the game was to live the latter lifestyle and have like money coming in for the least amount of effort possible.
Very different now, though, isn't it?
Now it's obviously, it's also because of the amount of people that are now in the game. So there's much more competition, and there's also much more, many more companies now getting banned because people are still living in that old mindset.
Yeah.
So now you need to be able to get results for clients, because otherwise they're going to leave you, or you're never going to be able to scale the business properly.
Well, that's why though, like we're both very long-term minded, which is why we will both be around in 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot of these other people won't. Us as entrepreneurs from 3 years ago, we would fucking slaughter us. Like the old Brandpreneur back in the day, if me and you both went up against them, we'd kill them. But the old Brad and Josh, we'd absolutely kill them in business with the results, with how, we were very short-term minded, I feel, back then. And that's one of the big progresses we've both made. And I can spot in myself and you is like, and it is the way to be, like client results. And the thing is as well, you can't get results for every client, right? Like there's so many factors that come into play. Yeah, if you have the crappiest company in the world with expensive products, bad shipping, clunky website, 40-day delivery time, it's not always down to the ads, right? But like all you can do, I feel, is that comes down to a couple of things. First of all, client selection. If you select the right client that you can help, and you master that. So like if you're in your scenario, you've got a set niche and you've got a set structure. So when you bring on a client, because you qualify them and they're a set client, you can crush it, right? And what that means is next time you go to a client in that same industry and you get killer results, it's like
you know what works and what doesn't.
You know what works, and you just replicate the success, and you'll grow, and you have scaled massively because of it, right? Yeah, it's interesting to see for sure.
Yeah. Do you because you focus very much on fashion and apparel, jewelry, e-com stores, right?
Yeah, so we have a white label. So basically we have kind of two structures to it. When we go out and get clients directly, right? So like not white label, we try and focus mainly on e-com stores. Yeah. We have worked with a lot of coaches, and we've got some fantastic results. We've worked with a lot of influencers as well. We've worked with some lead gen stuff, but our bread and butter really is e-commerce. Yeah. We do really well, I would say, in fashion and also like the pet industry. That's where we've got a couple of clients that are really absolutely like crushing it. Yeah. But yeah, so that's what we focus on mainly, I would say. And then we've also got the white label department, where we also white label for other agencies, and we run ads on behalf of other agencies. And that's a bit more difficult because we don't control the niche. So we get a bit of everything come through. And also, which is sometimes difficult, I would say, but that is, we do not always control the quality and the expectations that have been set, which also becomes difficult because, there'll be I'll give an example, right? There's clients that we are literally turning like 15 grand a month into like 250k a month for them, right? So we're generating like 3 mil a year from about under 200 grand a year in spend, like stuff like mind-blowing results where they're blown away, right? There's not a dollar slipping through the net. We've got like, it's just crushing. But then there's other clients that come on because they've just a brand new Shopify store, and we've got no control necessarily of the quality of that client, that we're generating like 0 sales for a month. And it's like, it's sometimes a very, very contrasting, which is interesting. But that's why our motto is always like, we do the absolute best that we can. But so that's kind of the two main sources of income that we have in the agency.
It's funny you should say that, because so we tried with the white label. I told you this yesterday as well. With the white, we started the white labeling for people that enrolled into my coaching programs that didn't fully grasp the Facebook ads just yet, but managed to get a client and basically wanted someone to keep that client afloat, get the results of the client while this person's still learning on the job. That's how the white label started. Yeah. And word just spread quite quickly. Okay, Josh has got this white label service, let's check it out. But exactly what you said, the difficult thing is you can't manage the expectations of the client or the way that client's brought in. So either in my coaching program, and this will be the same for your coaching program and your courses, etc. If someone comes through your systems, manage to get a client, they know what to say and what not to say.
Yeah.
But then when it's outside of that, you've got no control over it. So we got, for example, we got someone email us saying, listen, I'm not in your programs, but I've heard you've got a white label service. Do you offer that to other people outside the program? So I thought, well, why not? Why not? If we're willing to pay our fees, then, let's just give it a go. And this client comes in, and the client was an absolute, so we don't speak to the client, but the client speaks to the agency. So it looks like, in the eyes of the client, it looks like it's the agency managing, but it's actually us on the back end.
Yeah.
But the way, so the agency, our client, promised them the world. And then it was like, okay, go and get them the world kind of thing. I said, yeah,
you can't always do that with the client,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult. We do it a little bit different, just to jump in. Sorry. We don't, so when we do white label, we actually do the Slack communication with the client as well. So that's a slight difference.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's just so to follow on to that, how does the agency know that you're not going to do it anyway, but how does the agency know that you're not just going to take that client?
That's a trust thing. I would never ever do that. A prime example is, I've got very, I can absolutely be ruthless when I need to be with certain things. I do, however, I've got a very long-term mindset, and at the end of the day, my customers are my customers. I never make short-term money decisions ever. But that's one thing. That's one thing I can big myself up for. That I know that, you can say this. I've got a lot of faults, and I'm not the best entrepreneur in the world by far. There's lots of things I could be doing better. But one thing I know that I am good at is I will always make sure that I put my clients first. And if we land an agency as a client, they are our client. The end user and the end client is still our client, but our main client is the agency, right? They're the ones that we're serving, and via that we get to serve that other customer. So it's just a trust thing. And an example was the other day, I was speaking to a prospect actually, and this was actually through Upwork. And one of our agency partners, they actually sent us a photo saying, look, we want to hire a few people here and put them up against each other. And he sent a screenshot of his calendar, and it was by chance that on that calendar I spotted one of our agency partners. Yeah. So just out of respect, I didn't pursue the job anymore. Now, you could argue that was stupid because I could get this client directly at a much higher fee, probably arguably at least double the fee that we would get. Yeah. Anyway, it so happened that the guy that we left them to ended up getting the client, and we started working on it indirectly for our white label team for that client, and we're crushing it, and we're actually winning we're winning the deal right now over the other people. Now, if we did that for ourselves, we could have won that and got the money. But my loyalty lies with my customer, and I'm always going to put them first, money decision or not. My loyalty is with my customer. So we've got that level of trust. I've got that level of trust with a lot of our agency owner partners, where we're like, look, we're always going to put you first. We're not going to poach the client. And we've built this respect and trust over time. Like, we've had an example, I won't say who obviously, but that basically they didn't enjoy the agent. To be fair, we don't work with them anymore, but it wouldn't matter because they were a bit of a nightmare. But it was an agency owner that was literally what you said, over promising the world, short-term money decisions. I'm gonna promise you the world to get you through the door and get your money. Gets put to our white label team. We're acting on the behalf of this agency. Again, it's not seen as outsourced. We act as their team, as their media buyer. So we're in there communicating. It's like, I just call them John. It's like John, like the client would say, oh, John, the agency owner, has promised that you could get a 10x return. And we've got to then try and argue that back. But anyway, at the end of the month ends, obviously the client leaves after the month because results aren't there. And they message privately my media buyer and say, we really didn't like working with John. Can we work together directly with you? And obviously we screenshotted that message and sent it to our agency owner. We didn't overly enjoy working with that agency owner, but and we didn't enjoy.
Hey, there we go.
Here he is. Let me just whack my thing on record again.
All right. Where
where was I? Yeah, sorry about that.
The agency clients screenshot.
So basically the agency client, so the actual end client messaged our media buyers directly and said, look, we don't want to work through this agency anymore, but we love you and your service. Can we work directly with you? I don't know how they knew it was separate, because we go under their team, like everything, like there's no way they would have known unless something would have been said. I could only assume based off of the overpromises that something was said on the sales call.
Yeah.
But they basically said, look, we don't like this agency owner. Can we work with you? And just out of respect, because of the way my morals are, you could say, well, I could have had extra revenue. I could have been making double what I was making and keeping the same client, same workload, everything's set up. But it's not, I want to go to bed and sleep well at night, and I want to put my customers first. Like, I don't just say that I do it for the sake of social media. Like, I generally put my customers first. So anyway, yeah, that was another thing. And when you do stuff like that over time, that builds trust, Yeah. So yeah, we never have that kind of concern, and we would never do anything like that. If anything, I'm too soft and too caring on my customers. The fact it costs me money as a business, but I would rather run it like that, because it's a long-term play in my eyes.
Yeah. I agree. I'm sort of the same. So the reason why I always say with the white label, obviously we don't really do it anymore now, but when we did the white label, the reason why we never spoke directly to their clients is because I didn't want to put that fear in the agency that we could potentially poach them, because I'd hate to be in that situation myself. And it's like one of them is like, I wouldn't want to do something to someone knowing that if it happened to me, I would not like the outcome. I wouldn't like that, someone doing that to me. So I just sort of removed all that from the process and had that as like a USP. Like, the client thinks it's you, not us.
Well, that makes sense, And you know what? Again, this is one of those things where it's like, I just want to provide the best service. So we handle, with the way we look at it, is like, well, Slack communication is a big part of the job. So let's take care of that for you. So I see it as a value add. But I suppose that comes from, the whole reason I started it. And honestly, my goal would be to, my goal is to create the biggest and best white label company. Like I still want to very much run the agency too, but alongside that, and that was all built off the fact when we used to work together and we outsourced to media buyers, they are the shittest media buyers ever. They cost us so much money. You wouldn't hear from them for 2 days. The results were terrible. And I almost built this off of a known fact that there's such a need for good, reliable outsourcers or media buyers in this industry, and people don't have the resources to hire and do it. And that's the selling point from us. It's like, look, I take all the risk. I hire. I've got payroll to meet. I implement the standards, the quality. I make sure the guys stay ahead of the curve when it comes to knowledge and results. And also, what happens if one of our media buyers falls sick? Don't worry, I've got a bunch of media buyers. So we've got, I have to pay holiday pay, I have to pay sick pay, but don't worry, I've got a plan B when somebody falls sick. You're still covered. Whereas if it was just you directly and you were outsourcing to some guy online and they fell ill, what's your backup plan? You have to pay someone else. We have that covered. So it's a very good offer. And only because I've been in the industry myself, and we had job posts up literally every day. I don't know if you remember, looking for a media buyer. And anybody who fits within margins is impossible to find, like literally impossible, anyone good. And we learned that.
That's it. It's anyone good. Like you could find, if you really looked, you could find someone to run your ads for, let's say, £200 a month.
Yeah.
But the results would be that bad that it just would not be worth it.
Yeah.
I think personally, I'd love to know your thoughts on this as well, is because the whole industry is based on how to get more clients, how to make more money, but it's never about how to get results. And I've tried this, because we even talked about this, didn't we, with the YouTube content before we actually started recording. When you record a how to get results, or this is what I learned spending X amount of money, no one cares, no one watches it. But when you put up a video saying, look how I signed 4 clients in the last week, you'll get like 2,000 views in the first 2 days.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? Because we had this conversation. Now, we actually did a little experiment. We looked on my YouTube channel, and I had a video. If you exclude all the big ones that have ranked for keywords, like I've got a few that are doing well that are like ranked big. If you look at like social media, like SMMA based content, right? Yeah. Stuff that hasn't ranked too well, it just basically the views are coming from recommendations or my current audience. I've got 2 videos pretty much next to each other, which is like how I signed 5 clients, or how you can sign 5 clients in a week or something like that. And it's got like 3,500 views. And then next to it, I've got a video, which in my eyes is even more valuable, which is what I learned spending £500,000 in a month on a client ad account. And it's got like 900 views in a year. And like, I remember when I uploaded that, I was like, this video is going to bang. It's like, you know, and this was on one client as well. It was a really, really big client that we would spend like £500,000 basically in a year for this client, in a month for this client. And it was, the lessons in there are really, really good, right? Most people, most media buyers never get to the stage where they ever spend that amount on a single ad account, let alone sometimes over their lifetime. So it was a, you know, really good video. And like, when I remember I uploaded, it was like a 10 out of 10, like it tanked, like it was like the worst video I uploaded out of my previous 10. And it's just like, what? That, you know, you could argue that's partly down to maybe a lot of it being a beginner audience, but I would also argue it's a lot of people that just want to know the quick bullet. Like, how can I get 5 clients? Whereas when you want to run a real company, it's not about how to get clients, because if you can't keep them, or if you can't retain them, or build a good reputation, or have good systems and services, that's really what's going to allow you to scale, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And that's obviously like the whole reason why we set up that second course, Consult X, is on how to actually learn paid traffic, how to actually, you know, whether you become the media buyer of the agency, or you just know what to do so you can outsource it or build a team around it. That's completely up to you. But the whole point of Consult X is, okay, you now know how to get up to 6 figures. You now know, you know, how to get your first few clients. You now know how to make, you know, 8K a month, etc. Now what's next? You build systems. You start training a team. You start actually focusing on getting the client's results. Because at the end of the day, if you get a client a good result, portfolio material, authority within that niche, referrals, but also the fact that because you know you can get that, it's also like a confidence thing. If you've got 4 clients all in a certain niche and you're getting insane results for them, when you go into that call, you know, whether you've got a sales team or not, whether you go in, you know, whether your agency has that call with a new potential client in that niche, you can say, listen, the proof's in the pudding. You know, we're charging X amount and you're still going to profit from it. Everybody's going to win because, you know, we've got this down to a T. And the funny thing is, I still get more sales for lifestyle design, which is my beginner course on how to get started, than Consult X. And obviously, you know, that might be down to me not really promoting and pushing it as much, but it's also because the whole mindset is, you know, how to make a quick buck rather than actually how to get results.
And you know, I think that's a really good point. And you know, like I said, you could argue some of which is just a lot of people are the beginners, but even if you are a beginner, I think learning that extra stuff, it's like, I don't know about you, but I've also found recently a lot of the stuff, like I read books 3 years ago that I reread now, and they mean completely
it's so different, isn't it? Yeah.
So maybe it's a case that like you're not in the right time for that content. I mean, I don't know, but I find it's super. If I could rewind though and learn all of this stuff now, you know, you look at the last 12 months is when I've really scaled up more than anything, focused on the agency. Like I had a lot of that information before. It was just a few things that I was missing. And like, if I could go back to myself from 3 years ago, I could be in the position I am now 3 years ago, had I known that information. And it's not a regret, because that's part of the progress that you make. But, you know, that's why I think it's so important to learn like systems build and hiring a team, like all this stuff that we made so many mistakes back in the day on thinking short term and not making those, focusing on results and stuff like that. It was super interesting. So on that note then, like I suppose we could probably wrap this up on a couple final questions then, which would be, if we both had to go back and do it differently, which is a note we've got here, how would we do it differently? What would you do different?
I think you've already just hit the nail on the head there with what you said before. I think it's, so if we look at how we do it differently everywhere, like let's say quitting, like not necessarily quitting, because I don't really think that we quit, but if going separate ways wasn't an option and we had to stick it out, I think we'd have to pick a side. Like someone had to be on the front end and someone had to be on the back end, at least to get it up and running again, and to be out of the trenches. Because we were sort of in this little cycle of get a client, outsource it, lose a client, get a client, outsource it, lose a client. To get out of that rut, I think we needed to sort of pick a side, one on the front, one on the back, and then build it up to a certain degree. And then we can look at, you know, building better systems, because then we'd have the cash flow to actually invest into quality employees.
Agree.
If I just look at myself, like what would I do differently? I think it would be learning the media buying quicker and taking that more serious. And whether it is to do it myself, to run the ads myself and, you know, keep the profit margins, or to just be able to find a quality outsourcer, because it's hard to outsource something where you don't really know what to look for.
Yeah, yeah.
But like now, if I needed to outsource the media buying now, and I put up a job post on Upwork, I'll be able to see right away who's the right fit and who isn't.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, you could show me the most random portfolio, and I'd probably say, "Oh, that looks good." So you probably know what you're doing.
Because then you can enforce the standards and the quality and the systems.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, that's where, in me now, because I don't run the ads myself, but I know an awful lot about them.
Yeah.
To the point where I know I can, if I need to do some quality control or checking, we've actually, I'm in kind of different position. We have someone on the team who does the quality control, but that has been stemmed down from what I put in place. So I know what I want to look for when it comes to that quality control. I know, like, we have a set structure, right, with e-commerce clients, like, the type of structure we have with top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, the type of ads, the way that we test, that has all been decisions and stuff that have either come from me initially and been passed down, or like, let's say our media buyers say, right, we want to test this new strategy, and it comes up to me and I have the knowledge to not be like, if you think that's what's worked. No, like, I know what I'm talking about. So I'm able to say, yeah, I agree with you, I disagree with you, let's tweak and change. And I think that's one thing a lot, and I agree with you completely. And I would have to completely align with you. I think most people, when they first start their business, think that they can just outsource it, which I think is fine. If you're a complete beginner, your first client, I recommend you do automate it, just because you can make sure you're getting those quality results. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't learn. I think you should invest your time and education heavily on learning the service that it is that you're offering, because it will help across the board.
At the end of the day, it's a high ticket skill as well.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's because even though you don't do the ads yourself, like before we started recording, we actually did yesterday when we were talking about ads and the change in the industry, you carried that conversation as if you were a media buyer. Yeah. Like at no point did you not understand what I was talking about, or vice versa. Yeah. Because you were up to date with everything. Oh yeah, like iOS 14 changes, this and that, and nowadays, like you were basically talking about the same things that I was thinking and talking about as well. Yeah. Or, obviously I'm the media buyer. Like you mentioned the lookalike audiences and stuff. And I think like that sort of like knowledge is just necessary to have in order to be able to outsource it properly.
That's the thing. Education is everything. It's like, the two people, it's the whole thing. Like, I speak about this to my team all the time. It's like, you've got two people chopping down a tree. Someone spends 5 minutes sharpening it. It's chopped down. Like, we want to be those people, because then we can chop down 50 trees while he's still chopping down his first one. And it's like that education and staying up to date, it's so important, whether that is on the service that you're offering, whether that is on systems or whatever it is. Like, I think that would probably be another thing I would do different. If I'm being completely honest and transparent, one thing I would probably do different is when I first started, I read like a shit ton of books, right? Like I read loads of books, and that helped me tremendously. After a certain while, I think courses and above that, mentors and coaches are so much more valuable than books after a certain time.
I agree, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, mate. Someone's at my doorbell. For fuck's sake, 2 seconds. Every time I get mid thing. Yeah. So I was going to say, I think coaches and courses and that are so much more practical. The right ones, obviously, right? Not every single one, but and also learning from the right people. I think I learned a lot from the wrong people in the beginning. Like, there's a lot of people who do a very good job of being gurus in the space, but don't actually do it. And you know what? You can't. Some of the information that you really need to get to the next level, you can only have if you've really been in the trenches. Yeah. Like, I ran an agency before, but we didn't know anything about media buying back in the day. No. How much valuable would have that been? You can't learn that from someone who's just speaking about it. Like, the only reason the reason you're knowledgeable and I'm knowledgeable on the topic is because I'm in there, or my team's in there, and you're in there on a daily basis. And those are the people that you should be listening to. And I think I would probably swap a lot of the time I spent reading books to programs and more applicable stuff, I would say. Yeah,
no, I'm the exact same. Like, this is like financially, this is probably the best year we've ever had, like with the agency. And this is probably, like, this year, 2021 is probably the year I've read the least amount of books, but I've invested the most into coaching. Like, I don't think I've ever bought as many coaching programs and courses as I've done this year, like more than even when I started out. Like, when I started out, I'd always try and, if I had to choose when I started out between spending a whole weekend on YouTube trying to find that one golden nugget, then I'll choose that over buying a course any day of the week. Whereas now it's like, okay, I want to get to the same points. I want to know what's behind the curtain. I'll buy a course or I'll buy coaching. And exactly what you said, like sometimes you'll sort of get caught up in the branding or the marketing of, the gurus and stuff like that. And then you'll buy whatever it is that they're offering and you realize, okay, it's not actually what it's, you can tell they're not actually doing this stuff because you can tell by the way they're teaching, what they're saying, etc. It's not their expertise. And that's definitely, I definitely agree with that. Like pick the right people and also look at, whoever's starting out now and someone is teaching or offering a program, actually look at the background. Like look at, okay, what are they actually still doing this? Is it something that they've done or are they just teaching the theory of the business model? And that's like what I also said right at the start. Like if someone would just look at the amount of time that we've been in the industry, like rather than just looking at what's like new and who's the latest guru now, we'd win over a lot of people, but it's just not the way the world works.
Yeah, exactly. Because I make at the time of recording this anyway, I am planning to do some more coaching stuff in the future, but I make the least amount of money that I've made forever since I've launched my coaching business right now. All my income expenses, I run an agency. And it's funny because I've not had time, like last year up until this, since I've hired management, put all these systems in place and my day's a bit different. I'm busy running an agency. I don't have time for a coaching business. Like, I'm flat out like building this company. We've got offices, all these employees, all that stuff in the last 12 months. I've had to learn so much in the last months. I haven't had time for a coaching program, but now it's like, I feel like I'm even more qualified now than I ever have been before to coach and train more so than ever because I've been in the trenches. And, it's just an interesting thing. And on that note, you mentioned, and I'd like to get your take on this. You said you've invested more ever in coaching and courses in the last year than you ever have done. Okay. I wonder if that's because a lot of people, first of all, would think it's all about in the beginning you do that, but it's interesting to see that you've made the most growth and you've done that most this year. But is that also because you're established, you can learn one thing now, a golden nugget that can make you an extra 10 grand a month or make you an extra 20 grand a month. And because you're already established, the smaller things and because you can implement them easily will make a bigger difference to you than maybe the beginner. Because I think that a lot. Like I can watch YouTube videos now and get more value now even though I kind of know it, but like, it's like someone telling you a way in a different way. Like, hearing something that even is basic now will have more impact on my life, business-wise anyway, than something I probably would have learned 5 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not even sure what you're missing. So you're sort of like on YouTube, on forums, on Facebook, in Facebook groups, like running around like a headless chicken, trying to soak up as much as possible. And then once you actually sort of get past that and you've got everything up and running off the ground, you're much more specific in what you need to look for. But I think more importantly, with courses and coaching, one of the things I always look for is the community, like in the group, in the coaching, etc. Yeah. Because it's like, if it wasn't for a community, we'd never have met. Same goes for anyone that I still speak to now or is established now, that I know personally and I speak to on a regular basis, have all come from communities in courses and coaching programs that I've bought. So like that for me, if it wasn't for those programs, then I would have never met a lot of people that have helped me along the way. Because that's one thing I would look for.
You think about it though as well. You say about like the community, but you go on it, you look deeper, longer term here. But that goes to so much more because we've met through a community, right? If you go into offices, employees tomorrow, I can fast track all this shit that's taken me 12 months and we can jump on a couple of calls. And because we're mates, I'll just give you all the information for free. First of all, it's free. Second of all, you get to jump straight to somebody who's done it just because you know them. And you're going to save 12 months off the back of what I've done. And then vice versa. Like, you're even more on the ads on a day-to-day than I am. So if I need to know something about media buying or change what's working for you, I can message you and I can save tens of thousands of dollars of my clients' ad spend on tests. I can save clients leaving because stuff stops working. I can come straight to you, Josh, what have you found that's working, mate? Like, what's going on? And in split second, I've got all the information, everything that I need, not through a course or a coaching program, but through the person that I know off the back of that. So you actually think about it, it goes a lot deeper. You know, if you have at the end of the day, as they say, it's who you know, not what you know. And a lot of the times.
Yeah, I do agree to that to a certain extent. Yeah, definitely, man. I think that's a good little point to wrap this call up with. How long has it been? I've been checking my 90 minutes.
Okay, so there we have it. I hope you found a bunch of value in this video. As mentioned, all the links to Josh's stuff is down below. And if you are interested in any high-level training, want to work with me directly to grow your agency, or potentially you're looking for a media buyer for your agency, you're looking for a white label service, something along those lines, I have the link to both white label partnership and agency service in the description down below, and my high-level one-to-one coaching, training, programs and services. So all the links to that will be in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.